How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number 877-973-7425. Except, obviously, you can't call in. If you're listening for the whole show today, and you always should, the third hour has to be best of. I've got to take my son to the doctor. I got to get my wife from the hospital. Today has just been a crazy day. I wasn't even supposed to be here. But here we are. Life gets in the way sometimes, but I want to be with you here and dive in to what's happening before I have to sneak out of here. I want to talk about underlying economic data. By the way, I'm going to get into the Caribbean situation. It's escalating, but I want to talk about this data because I'm concerned about it. And I want to be very clear here. This doesn't have anything to do with tariffs. It doesn't have anything to do with this administration. Let me explain where we've come from as a nation going back to 2020. We had COVID. And the whole world shut down and people went home. And it became economically untenable. So what the government did is it paid people to not go to work because companies weren't selling products, therefore they couldn't make payroll. So countries around the world relied on their government treasury to print money to give to people, and that provoked global inflation. The Biden administration came in this country in 2021 and decided to do a massive stimulus to the economy. If you will recall, Larry Summers, who had been Barack Obama's economic advisor, I think Secretary of Treasury, had worked for Bill Clinton. He was the president of Harvard. He's one of the most distinguished economists in the world. He pinned a piece in the Washington Post and said, guys, you're going to provoke inflation if you throw this much money into the economy. The economy is already showing inflationary signs from the existing stimulus. This is going to be too much. And he was right. What happened as well is with people gone and with businesses struggling and with the decrease in the labor force, the government threw a lot of money into private businesses and was subsidizing private businesses. Over the last year, that money has started being pulled out of the system by the Federal Reserve and the Congress. They've been walking back subsidies to state governments. So a lot of companies are now struggling to rebuild a customer base where the government had been a stand-in for the customers. While that is happening, tariffs have had an impact at the consumer level and with a lot of small businesses. Tariffs, though, are a minor part of the story. The more major part of the story is that from the inflation over the last number of years, the government money flooding the system and now being pulled back out of the system, the economy hasn't been growing. Now you're like, Erickson, the numbers, we get the numbers, the economy's been exploding. Well, yeah, except there's a report that's come out of Harvard of an economic survey, and they got a little curious, and here's why. If you follow the stock market, and I've gotten back into investing, rereading Ben Graham's The Intelligent Investor, actually trying to find stocks for myself. And I rely on my buddy Dave Nicholas and my buddy John Lindvig to handle my money. They're smart people and use them. They don't work together. But I got two friends I rely on to handle my family's money and my investments. David Nicholas, I do advertisements for. He's a friend of mine. You see him on Fox a lot. Then my buddy John Lindvig's been a longtime family friend, handles my IRA and stuff like that. And I'm not an expert. I'm not an economist. I rely on these two guys who are. I read Ben Graham's Intelligent Investor years ago. I'm working my way back through it. I like to buy stocks. I like to buy dividend stocks. I like to reinvest the dividends. I like to grow my portfolio. I like to save my money in this way. And I've noticed as I've gotten back into it, and for a while I hadn't, there's not a lot of value out there. There are so many companies and the stock prices are so high right now. It's like, why? It's like Warren Buffett's like, why am I going to buy a stock that is this high? The PE ratio is way too high. It doesn't make any sense to me to buy a stock right now that is that high. And there are so many overinflated stocks. And when you actually look into the S&P 500, outside of the top 10, 15 stocks out there, you're not seeing a lot of growth in the stocks. You got some very highly priced stocks, but the underlying growth of the companies isn't there. The stock price is growing, but their actual economic growth is not. And Harvard saw this trend where outside of the top, and what are the big stocks? The big stocks are, they're NVIDIA, they're Apple, they're Amazon, they're Meta or Facebook, they're Netflix, there's AMD now, there's OpenAI is now exploding in investment and stuff. And you got these massive companies, some of the energy stocks related to AI. What happens when you get rid of the AI data center effect out there? What's going on with the rest of the economy? And it turns out nothing. What Harvard found is that the economy for the first half of this year only grew at 0.1% if you exclude the AI data center boom. And that's a telling problem. Now, why is that the case? The rest of the economy is only growing at 0.1% when it looks like on paper the economy is exploding. What's the underlying problem here? And the underlying problem is the COVID money. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but I know the experts to talk to. The government flooded the economy with so much money because people dropped out of the workforce. People weren't buying stuff. People were staying home. They were giving consumers money so that the consumers could spend money, and all of that is being walked away now. And it shows an inherent weakness underlying the economy. And now let's look at those big exploders out there, NVIDIA and AMD now with OpenAI. How are these stocks? And this should give you alarm bells, that I can easily explain this one to you. NVIDIA invested millions of dollars. I think it was $100 million in OpenAI. OpenAI has ChatGPT. I'm sure you've all heard of ChatGPT at this point. ChatGPT works by processing using GPU chips. Those are graphics processing unit chips that make mathematical calculations at a high rate of speed. And OpenAI uses those sorts of chips from NVIDIA to run ChatGPT through data centers around the country, consuming an awful lot of power. NVIDIA invests $100 million in OpenAI. OpenAI then takes the $100 million investment and buys $100 million worth of NVIDIA chips. There's no real investment there. NVIDIA gave OpenAI the money to then buy the chips from NVIDIA. And now OpenAI has bought stock in the chip manufacturer AMD. They're chip designer. They don't manufacture, they design and outsource. So they bought a bunch of stock in AMD. They sent out a public press release saying we bought stock in AMD. The AMD stock skyrocketed as a result. And then OpenAI sold the stock and used the profit to buy chips from AMD. This is not sustainable. It's circular. NVIDIA gives $100 million to ChatGPT, which then uses the $100 million to buy NVIDIA chips. Who got $100 million? Nobody. Nobody got really $100 million. Or OpenAI, ChatGPT buys AMD stock. The stock goes up. They sell the stock. They take the money. They buy the chips. That this looks like a real bubble. When the rest of the economy only grew at 0.1%, and the rest in the tech sector, it looks like a bubble, and that bubble is going to pop at some point. That's not to say you can't make money in the stock market right now. And certainly people are making lots of money off of NVIDIA and AMD and the rest of it. But I'm telling you, there's an underlying fundamental weakness in the economy, and the president's team realizes it, and that's the key here. They realize something is not right here. The NVIDIA OpenAI deal was a red flag for pretty much everybody. And then the OpenAI AMD stock purchase and sale and purchase of chips, that was another red flag. And the red flags keep coming with the economy. Now you've got Harvard looking at the underlying stock market and the businesses out there. You've got these massively inflated stock prices and no growth in the companies. And then you've got some, but not all power companies, but you got a lot of power companies out there right now that are struggling to build massive output for data centers in their states. What happens when the data centers collapse? Because the bubble bursts. You'll have a lot of power companies that have made overcapacity. And their overcapacity will then bring down power rates, and those power companies are going to have underlying economic problems. There's a cascading effect that happens. So the power companies are building out the power grid to handle the data centers. The data centers are building out to handle the graphics processing unit chips from NVIDIA and AMD, to handle OpenAI and to handle Grok and to handle Genesis. And that's Google's. Google up the road from me is about to build a massive data center. Amazon is building out data centers. When the bubble bursts, you have all these data centers on a lot of real estate. The data centers aren't being used as much. The power is an oversupply. The power companies have too much power. Rates go down because of market forces. Who's left holding the bag? Our government. Our government is hitting $40 trillion in debt. Can't really bail out these companies without causing the government to go under. The warning signs are there for you to be prepared for. How do you prepare? Talk to your financial advisor. And if your financial advisor is dismissive of all of this, you might need a different financial advisor. You can make money in a bubble, but the bubble can pop. It's like the dot-com bubble. So Ben Graham, he died in the, I think, 1970s. He had started out on Wall Street before 1929. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, the two most successful investors ever, both say his book is like the Bible of investing. It's called The Intelligent Investor. They've got an updated version of it that's worth reading. And essentially that if you're just buying because money, the market looks good and stuff going up, you're a speculator. You're not an investor, you're a gambler. What was so funny is that in the early 2000s, late 90s, during that dot-com bubble, a lot of people, including Jim Cramer, who's on CNBC, were essentially saying Ben Graham's ideas on how you invest are now worthless. We're in a new era. Things are different now. The internet is efficient. The internet is strong. The internet is good. These companies are incredible. And a lot of those people, including Cramer, lost a lot of money after dismissing Ben Graham's intelligent investor advice on how you actually find stocks of value and invest. The problem is, we keep seeing things. There's nothing new under the sun, and the problems come along. So here's the thing. The internet bubble busted, but the internet's still here. In fact, it's probably better and more powerful than it was then. AI is not going to go away, and the data centers are not going to go away, but the overcapacity probably is. And resources will align themselves. And my suggestion to the powers that be in Washington when this bubble bursts is you let the creative destruction of the marketplace take place. You allow the free market to pick the winners and losers, not the government. And my fear is that the government's going to decide that it knows best. My fear is that the government's going to inject itself into the process to try to pick the winners and losers, and the government's not going to do it as well as the free market itself. The free market's making mistakes right now. There is this bubble. There are more and more people becoming aware of it. The market is starting to reassess. All we need is one black swan event to blow the whole thing up. Maybe it's China doing something. Maybe it's terrorism. We don't know. The market will realign. And when it does, the government should stay out of the way. We're still having problems with GM and certain banks and other companies because the government bailed them out. Look at Fannie and Freddie are still under government conservatorship. They should be back in the private market. We're now having problems with the way loans are structured in this country for housing. One of the reasons mortgages have gone up the way they are is not just government interest rates. It's because of Fannie and Freddie being consumed by the government. And so they use the bully power of the government to get others to structure loans in certain ways. We're not having changes in the loan process that we should. Let the free market work. I want you to be aware of this. I want you to be ahead of the curve on this. I want you to be smarter than your neighbors. I want you to know it's coming. I want you to know that people have been saying it's coming for a while, and now the AMD and the NVIDIA and the OpenAI stuff raising lots of red flags. But what I want you to know is talk to your financial advisor. Find one if you don't have one. Be prepared. And also, when it happens, and I don't know when it'll happen, but when it does, you should be prepared to say to the government, do not bail these companies out. Let the creative destruction of the marketplace restructure itself. It'll be better for everyone in the long run. Y'all, I have been waiting to tell you about Cove Pure. I'm so excited. So, I moved my radio show and podcast out of my house to a studio, and I'm in a big corporate building, and you don't really trust the water out of the pipes. Cove Pure is the fix. They've got clear wave technology. It removes 99.9% of contaminants, lead, PFAs, pharmaceuticals, you name it. I've got one in my office, and I finally have stopped buying bottles of water thanks to Cove Pure. There's no need to call a plumber or drill any holes. I was able to do it. You just plug it in on your countertop. You set the temperature you want on the touchscreen. It tastes like water. That is, it doesn't have a taste. It's fantastic. Take back control of your family's health and drink water the way it's meant to be. Go to covepure.com/Eric right now. Get $200 off while supplies last. That's covepure.com/ERICK. covepure.com/Eric. Get $200 off. covepure.com/Eric. Did you guys see the video Trump put on social media? It's one of those AI-generated videos of him flying like an F-15 or F-A-18 one, flying over the No Kings protesters, dropping poop on them, including on Harry Sisson and other prominent progressives who were involved. I thought it was kind of funny. The media demands that we be outraged. They actually asked people, Republicans, about the video. They asked the Speaker of the House about the president's video. It just, the outrage by the president putting that, it was so dumb. People are just looking for something to be outraged by. I thought it was kind of funny myself. But now, of course, the left wing spin it is, we got under Trump's skin. We got under his skin. He wouldn't have done that video if we hadn't gotten under his skin. It's all about letting people get under people's skin, I guess. That because Trump said anything at all about the No Kings protests, it must therefore have been a successful effort to own the president. So juvenile. I honestly think the Republicans should have ignored it and moved on. I am glad there was no violence. I was worried that the Antifa rioters would start smashing storefronts and throwing Molotov cocktails, and they did none of that, which is good, and we should be thankful. So it's probably time to move on to other things now. When we come back, the situation in the Caribbean is escalating. The president having ordered the striking of another boat. This time it's from Colombia. We'll get to it when we come back. First, I need to tell you about Hillsdale College. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com today, you can sign up with Hillsdale College, and you can take one of 40 free classes. There's no charge for you, and you get smarter about a topic you're interested in. Each class is composed of 30-minute video lectures from Hillsdale's really fantastic faculty. Depending on the class, depends on the number of videos. You do it at your own pace. You get a certificate of completion when you're done. They have a great economics class. They've got a great one on capitalism. They have one on the founding of the country, one on the founding of Rome, a C.S. Lewis one that I dearly love. And you got fantastic faculty from Hillsdale doing it. If you want to find out more about it, you go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, and you sign up today with Hillsdale College. Take one of the classes. Just try it for free. You've got nothing to lose. You're going to get smarter about a subject. They've got 40 to choose from history to philosophy to political science to literature to economics, math, chemistry, you name it. Get smarter about a topic you care about that you're interested in. ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up with Hillsdale College today and get smarter with real education, not indoctrination. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. Glad to have you with me. Don't forget, if you text Eric to 33777, you can get the show notes. Actually, if you text DATA, D-A-T-A, text DATA to 33777, you get the paid version with a discount. It's like 15-20% discount. It's only $70 a year, $7 a month. But you can still get a discount if you text DATA to 33777 and subscribe. And you want to, because I got 3 stories I want to reference here, and they're in the show notes because we take all the stuff that I talk about in the show and we put it in the show notes for you so you can follow along. So I'm not thinking for you. You see what I'm reading. You can interpret it differently if you want, but I want you to have all the stuff. 3 stories here. Let me read you from these because the situation is escalating in the Caribbean as the president signals he really is into the Monroe Doctrine and is really trying to crack down on what's happening in the Caribbean with the drug cartels. He's trying to destabilize them. Remember, here's just the truth. This is not my opinion. This is true. The drug cartels have been cooperating with the Chinese cartels, and the Chinese cartels are given tacit permission by the Chinese government to flood the Americas with drug components to poison Americans. So the Chinese cartels work with the drug cartels in the Central and Southern American countries that manufacture fentanyl and other drugs and then ship them into the United States. And it's actually a global operation against the American people that President Trump is taking seriously. Now, 3 stories headline: Washington Post, officials, locals undercut Trump claims about Venezuela drug boats. Claiming the power to summarily kill traffickers as though they're enemy troops, Trump has authorized the U.S. military to strike at least 6 speedboats the administration has deemed suspicious, killing dozens of people since the beginning of September. At least half of the strikes and 21 of the killings, locals say, have transpired in the waters between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, nations so close that on clear days they're within eyesight of each other. But records and interviews with 20 people familiar with the route or the strikes, including current and former U.S. and international officials, contradict the administration's claims. The passage, they said, is not ordinarily used to traffic synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, present in 69% of drug overdose deaths last year, nor are the drugs typically headed for the United States. Trinidad and Tobago, a Caribbean nation more than 1,000 miles south and 1,200 miles east of Miami, is both a destination market for marijuana and a transshipment point for South American cocaine bound for West Africa and Europe, according to U.S. officials, Trinidadian police, and international analysts. The fentanyl seized in the United States, in contrast, is typically manufactured in Mexico using precursors from China and smuggled in through the land border. The military strikes are unlikely as a result to cut overdose deaths in the United States, but it has brought U.S. forces into striking distance of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So this is the spin in the Washington Post that, yeah, okay, they may be drugs, but they're not bound for the United States, so it's bad. Really? I mean, that's it. Oh, this is cocaine bound for Africa. Wow. Now, next one. This is the New York Times. U.S. kills 3 on boats suspected of smuggling drugs from Colombian rebels. The United States has killed 3 men and destroyed another boat. It's suspected of running drugs in the Caribbean Sea. This one alleged to have been affiliated with the Colombian insurgency group, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced on Sunday. It was the 7th boat known to have been attacked since early September as part of the Trump administration's use of the military to kill people suspected of smuggling drugs as if they were enemy soldiers in a war rather than arresting them as criminals. The latest strike took place on Friday, and Mr. Hegseth said in a social media post on Sunday it had targeted a vessel associated with the National Liberation Army, a Colombian rebel group known as the ELN. So far, the Trump administration has acknowledged killing 32 people in the strikes, whose legality has been widely disputed by outside legal experts. Hegseth said, quote, "The vessel was known by our intelligence to be involved in illicit narcotics smuggling, was traveling along a known narco-trafficking route, and was transporting substantial amounts of narcotics. He did not provide evidence." Now, last story, this is from the New York Times. Again, text DATA to 33777. You get them all yourself in the show notes. President Gustavo Petro of Colombia accused the United States of murdering a fisherman in an attack on a boat that the American authorities claim was carrying illicit drugs. President Trump responded on Sunday and said he would slash assistance and impose new tariffs on the country. The feuding between the 2 leaders reflected rising tensions in the region over the huge U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean targeting Colombia's neighbor Venezuela. U.S. forces have killed dozens of people in recent weeks aboard vessels that the Trump administration says were ferrying drugs from Venezuela. The administration has provided no evidence to support the claims beyond descriptions of intelligence assessments and declassified videos of portions of the attack. Legal specialists have called such killings illegal because militaries cannot lawfully target civilians who do not pose a threat in the moment and are not directly participating in hostilities. Quote, U.S. officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty and territorial waters, the Colombian president wrote on social media. He said the man killed in the mid-September attack, Alejandro Carranza, was a lifelong fisherman whose boat had experienced damage and was adrift, probably in Colombian waters, at the time of the attack. I need you to know something. I think the rules of engagement on civilians are garbage when it comes to narco traffickers, because the narco traffickers are many times in league with governments and are acting in acts of war in other ways. I do not care for the legal analysis that claims these attacks are illegal, because I think the legal analysis needs to be broadly updated when it comes to narco trafficking, given the damage narco trafficking does. And I think the president's team is accurate to describe them as acts of war against the American people, because they're collaborating with the Chinese and others. And the Chinese cartels are fronts for the Chinese government, operating in ways to undermine the United States and kill American civilians. And it's past time we stop treating them as criminals and blow them up as if they are enemy combatants against the United States, in the same way we would Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that are themselves not nation states, but terrorist groups. Having said that, I am concerned that Pete Hegseth may not be the best guy to say whether or not these are narco-terrorists or fishermen. I am a little bit concerned that maybe some of the people we're killing aren't actually narco-terrorists transporting drugs. I am concerned. That being said, I'm not opposed to the change in policy. And also, the Colombian situation is notable because the Colombian president is a far leftist who is backed by China and Venezuela. And he got into power because the Biden administration did not like the pro-America Colombian administration that was there, knew the Chinese, the Russians, the Cubans, and the Venezuelans were backing Mr. Petro, and decided to do nothing about it because they didn't want to dirty their hands in a foreign election. They didn't want to be accused of meddling in an election, even though foreign powers hostile to us were themselves involved in meddling in the election. So we have an anti-American leader in Colombia, in a country that has largely been pro-America for some time, because the Chinese, the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the Russians got involved in the election to help get a far-left radical elected, and the Biden administration decided they were fine with that. That's why we are in the situation with Colombia. You do need to know that. It doesn't get talked about by the American media because, of course, Joe Biden could do no wrong in their eyes, nor could the progressives who worked for Joe Biden, but it's true. The Biden administration let a regime that had been very pro-America fall into the hands of the Venezuelans and the Chinese. And guess what? That man is allowing drug dealers to leave Colombia and come to the United States years after the United States very famously allied with the Colombian government to root out the Medellin cartel and the like, and decapitate the cocaine dealers of Colombia, not literally, but metaphorically. Venezuela and Colombia together right now are leftist. They don't like the United States and are ruining the lives of their people, which are forcing a refugee crisis into the United States with a lot of people from Colombia and Venezuela. The president rightly and wisely believes if he can shut down that problem, he can shut down the refugee problem, he can shut down the illegal immigrant problem, and he can shut down the gang problem as well. And it makes a lot of sense. And he's not getting credit from the American press, from the Democrats, really from anybody. And all I'm doing is telling you the truth. You people who don't like the president may not like it, but his policy sense in this is sound. Also, I think narco traffickers should be treated as terrorists, and we should blow them up. But also, what I think is very notable here is a presidential administration with a lot of people who have maligned others as globalists is increasingly operating as a globalist regime change-oriented operation and administration where they are perfectly fine to oust Nicolas Maduro and bring pressure to bear for others to oust Nicolas Maduro. Very notable that the Venezuelan opposition leader, who, by the way, National Public Radio has listed the woman as far right. She is, in no sense, is the leader of the opposition in Venezuela far right. In no sense is she far right. Yet, National Public Radio decided in their social media feed to label her as far right. But she's rallied the opposition. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. She credited Donald Trump with her getting the Nobel Peace Prize. He is very invested in ousting Nicolas Maduro because, if you will recall, he came very close to doing so. He lost in 2020. Joe Biden came in and abandoned the plans and then turned a blind eye to what the Chinese and the Venezuelans were doing in Colombia. And Joe Biden let Colombia slip through our fingers and emboldened Nicolas Maduro, and President Trump realizes he's on the clock. He's got less than 4 years. He's got to make a change. He should be commended for trying to disrupt the politics of the northern South American nations, because Maduro himself wants war with Guyana, where we have American oil interests, and the British have interests, our allies. Also, you should know that a lot of the neighbors in the Caribbean aren't particularly keen on Maduro because Trinidad isn't just coming to the United States, it's setting up shop on those islands as well and exacerbating crime on those islands. So getting rid of Maduro and restoring a democratically ordered, American-oriented government in Venezuela is for the good of not just us, but a lot of the Organization of American States partners. Now, you're not going to hear that from the national press, are you? You're not, because they hate Trump and they don't want to give Trump credit for anything. And they don't particularly like anything that advances American interests. They're perfectly fine with the leftist narco states of Colombia and Venezuela working with the Chinese and the Russians and the Cubans against the United States. Don't look now, but the Cuban regime is unraveling as well because of the economic problems in Cuba. Just think about this. Our current president, Donald Trump, could get out of the White House in January 20th, 2029, having confirmed 5 members of the Supreme Court if Alito and Thomas retire, having conducted regime change in Venezuela, Colombia, and Cuba, having decimated Hamas with the help of Israel, wiped out Iran's nuclear capability, and still had a bunch of his supporters bash the globalists, and have the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC give him no credit for a global realignment towards the United States away from China and away from authoritarianism. They see Donald Trump as so authoritarian they can't even realize he's actually advancing the interests of democracies around the world. It is a mature and consistent foreign policy. It also reflects the priorities and concerns of Marco Rubio, who is clearly a trusted partner for Donald Trump. It's a good thing. And we should be thankful the president of the United States is there and not Kamala Harris, who would make a disaster of all of it were she still there. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. One housekeeping note. Unfortunately, just as I've been filling you guys in, the next hour is, I'm not sure what Charlie put together, but I'm not going to be live. I've got to get my wife. We're checking her out of the hospital. Going to take my son to the doctor, and that's just life. I was supposed to be playing golf today, and y'all were going to have a guest host, and the guest host had to cancel because of a family situation, and so I was going to have to go play golf in the morning, come back, do my show, go play golf in the afternoon. Then my wife got hospitalized. My son got sick. I am being Dr. Husband, Dr. Dad, and family first, but thankfully I can make the show work around the schedule for checking Christy out of the hospital and everything else. So just so you know. Now, I noticed this weekend Al Jazeera. I back up. I've been telling you about the Christian genocide in Nigeria. Bill Maher on his show has been talking about the massive number of Christians murdered in Nigeria. There actually is an Islamic jihadist element, Boko Haram, the terror group, ISIS, and others working together to exterminate the Christians of Nigeria, who have been a majority of the population. and they're reducing in numbers mostly through murder. There was another church burned this weekend in Nigeria and the people inside murdered. The Al Jazeera, which is funded by Qatar, wants you to know there's no Christian genocide. It's complicated. It's not really a genocide. It's complicated. They want you to know. They're trying to correct Bill Maher, who raised the issue on his program last week. It is very notable to me that it is yet again a Qatari-funded operation that is being dismissive of these concerns. It was a Qatari-funded operation, Al Jazeera, that was claiming genocide in Gaza. It was Al Jazeera that was claiming Hamas was innocent. It's Al Jazeera right now claiming Hamas is not violating the peace terms of the deal. Al Jazeera is a propaganda network funded by Qatar. Do you know how many people in Washington, D.C. have ties to the Qatari government? I think Kash Patel was a lobbyist for him. I think I read Pam Bondi, maybe not, but I think I read Pam Bondi had also been a lobbyist for him. Democratic lobbyists abound. Qatar spends massive amounts of Washington in Washington on an influence operation. And thankfully, I think Patel and Bondi know what's going on there. They realize it. But for a while there, Patel for sure, I think Bondi were both lobbyists for Qatar. They spin a massive operation in Washington on both sides of the aisle. They fund Al Jazeera, which is a propaganda front, and now they're dismissing the actual reality of genocide against Christians in Nigeria because it is Islamic terrorists who have ties to the Qatari regime who are murdering the Christians. You all need to be aware of this. And today, by the way, the United Nations put up a poster. We put it in the show notes, you can see. It's a poster. It says, with active conflicts at its highest level since 1946, the role of women in peacekeeping is more important than ever. Alongside women on the ground, UN Women is uplifting women's leadership to realize a peaceful world. Hashtag for all women and girls. And the picture is women in burqas. When women lead, peace follows. They're wearing niqab, which is the Taliban's forced clothing for women. These are not women who are making peace. These are women who are submitting to Islamic men. That's the image the UN is purveying. Good Lord. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America. They are warning people, the first part of this hour, warning people about the economy is not as stable as it appears. There are underlying currents, and Swiss America has been warning people about a secret war on cash. With bank instability out there, with instability in the economy, they want you to be protected. Have you seen what gold is doing? Good gracious. Swiss America is the trusted leader in precious metals in this country, and they're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They can educate you on the secret war on cash. You can get a copy completely for free. All you have to do is call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Let Swiss America educate you about the secret war on cash in the country. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. That's SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Or just call or text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. Text Eric, ERICK, to 800-289-2646. Let Swiss America educate you. Message and data rates may apply.